ask Ida for a roll call.
Director Barber, Vice Chair Shirley,
Here.
Chair Delgado.
Here. All right, so we have a quorum. We may be joined by Kim. Anyone in the public wishing to comment? I see no one here. Anyone online, Ida?
No, I show none.
Okay, then we'll go down to the minutes of November 5th last year and June 3rd of this year. I've looked them over and don't have any comments.
Either do I, so I'll move to approve.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes with the two of us here. And we'll move on to potential revenue opportunities.
Yes, I'll start this one. Thank you, Chair. We, as an organization, have been talking about through the last several months in our budget, our ability to cover our operating expenses, but also see a shortfall when it comes to our capital infrastructure. And at this time, we would like to get a head nod from our chair and our vice chair and this financial committee around the ability to negotiate more revenue, and that would be landfill space. And so we recognize the shortfall, and I think the attempt for the organization will be to get an average spend for our capital expenses created. And I think right now we are about $3.5 million in excess of operating expenses. This year we have about short of $12 million in capital infrastructure projects. So you can see there's a big delta there on any given year. And we've done a projection for a 5-year period of what our expenses could realize. So there is a shortfall in revenue amount. We'll continue to eat into our reserves and our cash availability that we have right now. And the staff recommendation is to go out there and solicit opportunities around landfill space that I can bring back to the board for review and feedback so that we could start filling in that revenue gap. It was a strong position as I presented through the budget process, as Director Guerrero presented through the budget process as well. We are seeing more optics around what we need as an organization to fulfill the quota and to keep our infrastructure in place. If we don't and we defer infrastructure, it just becomes more expensive, and then it becomes burdensome on how do we afford it in certain years. And I think what we're realizing, and I believe strongly, we're in year number 2 and entering in year number 3 in the strategy towards 2036, and having the ability to have a stronger position to negotiate at a stronger position for the organization. And we're starting to see that now. And we're starting to see the markets around us also compete for who's coming in and who's delivering material. And we believe that the market will still continue to shrink over time. So there is needs outside of ReGen for landfill space. And I think this would be a good time to try to bring a viable contract representing what we've seen and we've done as an organization and keep our guiding principles at the forefront. We believe we have 100 to 120 years of landfill life still. Guiding principle says, hey, we'll recognize it around 75. And we also still have that need to pay off our legacy liability, which is the CalPERS liability of around $18 million, and about another $28 million of the bonding that we have, which is our risk and liability position. So capital expenses along with the liability that we owe. I think that our position should be go and seek either extensions of the agreement so that we have revenue through 2036. And there's things that are right in the forefront that we know that will impact us. We have an expiration of the waste connection agreements in 2030. And our goal is to make it to 2036. So we have another obstacle in front of us is we lose about $2.5 million on an annual basis in 2030. And although we're creeping our way through the gate rate and other revenue throughout our operations, we still believe it's still going to be a shortfall. And we want to make sure that we can do everything we can to get us prepared for 2036 decision. Do we need more of this? How much more over 36 do we desire? And I believe as Director Guerrero gets embedded in our operation, and getting through a budget season at a rapid pace, also discovery of our people needs, right? We're in a fast position to fill the vacancies that we have. And I think she will be able to ground herself to running the optics that we're seeing as we start projecting in these years towards 2036 relevance to what's going on today. But I think it is a great opportunity for us to start listening to what's going on out there for the people that are interested in some of the landfill space that we have available. So we want to be open for business, and I would just really like to get the finance committee support that we can track this. I'm not trying to get anything signed. I'm not trying to get anything approved. We'll bring the options that prevail themselves to the board to recognize and get feedback, and then we can move on to the next stages. But I would be highly interested in bringing back some opportunities that this organization has. And David, is there anything you'd like to add, or Director Guerrero, you guys like to add?
I just want to reiterate, we're addressing this on a number of fronts. So one of the fronts is the increased revenues opportunities that may be out there. There's also internal efficiencies that can be gained by reevaluating or checking that what we're doing is the best business case for certain operations. And then also we are in the middle of evaluating the capital improvement program and making sure that those expenses are actually going to happen in the timeline that we expect them to. So we have the master planning process that's aiding us in that. So just wanted to point out that it's a broad approach to resolving the issue, not just this one element. This is one element of multiple initiatives that we're pursuing.
And just to add, like on the revenue side, and kind of when we look at, for instance, housing, right? When the market is oversaturated, then the value of each of those houses for the seller is going to go down, right? And so when we look at the value of the landfill space as it is now, we know that we're able to facilitate at least the 75 years, because we're projecting 100 to 120 at this point. We have an opportunity to maximize the return of selling that space now versus as the state continues on with what their desires are, which is ultimately diverting. And if we're doing a good job of that down the road, the landfill space is actually not as valuable, right? So the time is of the essence in terms of securing the most valuable return on it now, knowing that we're also doing these internal evaluations, and we're just continuing to refine especially for needs, but really maximizing that return, because in 5-10 years it could be completely different, right? The landscape of what the state requires, new bills, those are the things we can't control.
That's an interesting point.
We'd love to have your guys' feedback on it, right? You guys were there for the budget process, kind of heard the reiterations. We spent ample time around every detail in it. So I felt this was the most appropriate place for us to start the discussion. And I know that I had mentioned it in the meeting, like once we get back, I'm going to go look for more dollars, but here's the request. And I think we can start positioning ourselves to what we've already worked out in the past or better than, right? And abating those ones that were further back, that were at a much more favorable pricing for the other party and not ReGen. I think we are starting to flip the page as they start becoming more favorable for us along the way.
Yeah. I'm curious what logistically what that looks like. Are you just more open to the things that are coming at you? Are you like proactively going and seeking out certain contracts and thinking about like, okay, I want this amount, and so this is my goal, and so I'm shooting for that goal? Like what would be your approach?
I think there's two aspects. I think that we're aware of two agreements that would expire prior to 2036. And that's going to reduce the amount of revenue that we've been ramping up with gate rate increases. So it kind of offsets what we've already accomplished. And so what I like to do is either have those extended out through 2036, maybe even past it, just enough so that we can reassure ourselves, and those will be more favorable. And abating the largest contract that we have that expires in 2036 could mean just less volume at a better price to bring in the same amount of revenue. So that's the first attempt, is to stabilize the loss of revenue along the way to 36. And the other one is to actually influence revenue of today. I would say maybe $1 to $2 million would be a great start for us. And it's not a whole lot of landfill space, but it is about $1 to $2 million over the 3.5 that we have. Now it takes us to about $5.5 million over our operating expenses, which now gives David and Rosanna an opportunity to see what we have projected over that time. And could we mix and match it to reduce those high year expenses to be more favorable and in alignment with a 5 to 6, maybe even a $7 million over operating expenses just for infrastructure on an annual basis, rather than having this heartbeat where it's 12 million, like what we're experiencing this year, and then it drops down. Last year, it was about $3.5 to $4 million used. So we just want to get it more leveled out over a longer period of time, and abate the, we can't do it because we don't have the money, right? We just want to schedule it when we do have the money. But we do need to increase that 3.5 million. The 3.5 million wouldn't support an average all the way across the board on what we're projecting right now. And that's the nuance. So we want to get that up. And to David's point, we're working on some other stuff laterally with it. That's the next item for discussion that we have around our landfill gas utilization. That is another aspect. But many more, we're experimenting with our operational processes to get more efficient. And those will have some results as well. And so we got to see them happening, but I don't think we stop and wait to see what results are going to be. We need to continue it. And once we get over the hump, we will be able to really slow down on what we have been trying to achieve over this period. But again, reminding everybody on an 11-year trek when we started in 25 towards 2036, here we are entering the 30-year of that projection, and it's working. You know, relatively, we see it working. We see the increases at the gate rate that are making an impact on the decisions that we're making, the positions that we made on other external agreements where we inflated what the value of our landfill was in comparison to other agreements that we were in already. It is just a very good position that we're in right now, and I want to better continue to make sure that we're diversifying the revenue in different places, and making sure that we achieve the end goal is being in the best bargaining position on whatever the need is at 2036.
How much is the green waste contract? You mentioned Waste Connection is 2.5 million. How much is green waste through 2036?
It current date dollars is about $8.5 million.
All right. And then when you said that if we got another 1 to 2 million, let's call it 2 million. If we got new 2 million, and added that to our 3.5 million now, it'd be about 5 million. The 3.5 million now, what was that in reference to, that 3.5 million?
That's your operating expenses.
Okay, so right now we're over operating expenses, able to put that overage into capital projects.
Yes.
So we have about 3.5 million. If we got 2 new million, we'd have 5.5 million. But ideally, I think you said it'd be good to go 7 million above operating expenses.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess my biggest point is that it'd be nice to have this all in writing. And I want to ask if there's a downside to putting it all in writing. Does it give our competitors, or, you know?
I think that's the intent why we didn't singly call out any of the potential.
Right. But in the future, it seems like it'd be.
I think they can go tied together. Is here's what we believe we need as an organization, and here's the agreement that we're presenting you at the same time. So it'll capture what we feel is the need. I think that we still need time to get it all what the need is, and we're adjusting every year, every operating month of the expectation, and we're not going to have it exact science. I don't know that it's $5 every year on the gate rate plus excess million. But we need to achieve it so we can realize it, and then we can, but the summary could say this is the first step to achieve. And the outcomes need to be vetted so that we can make the next decision on, is it too much? And if we went over, that would be great. Because that would mean could come back and say we're having a 1% gate rate increase, but relatively, we still have 8 more years to achieve what we want to achieve by 2036, and we can't stop now, is the goal. But I appreciate your position on stating what exactly we need. But I think we need to take the incremental steps of evaluating. Potentially we need X, but it could change based on what we're projecting. So we can prepare that as we bring in an agreement to you to review. Is here's what you're reviewing, and here's what we believe the organization needs in today's time, which in 1 year could change based on the outcomes that we're achieving.
Well, except for proprietary reasons where we don't want to let out, invaluable information, setting that aside for now, I would love to see in writing our annual revenue projections, which we probably already at least have a 5-year projection, our annual expenses, not counting capital improvement projects. We probably already have that, right? We have a 5-year projection in our budget.
Yeah, the budget already has in that 3-year outlook. That's where our expenditure.
We used to have 5 years.
I believe maybe like a few years ago, yes. But what we're working off right now is, since there has been a lot of changes, 3 years is more realistic when we look at all of the variances that can hit at the 4th and 5th year.
Okay, so ideally, if I waved the wand, it would be show me our best estimates for 10 years through 2036 or 2038, whatever. And I know the further you get, the more guessing it is. And that was always the case when we had 5-year budget projections. We knew that the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year were less solid than, the first couple of years. But to know what our annual revenue the best guess, and then the average day-to-day operations expenses, and then our annual capital project needs through the same period of time. And it might go up and down. You might just put an average when you get on the out years, but you have a pretty good idea of what we need to do in the next 10 years and what that kind of costs in the next 10 years. You might not know exactly which year you're going to spend all that money, but in the next 10 to 12 years, you kind of know what we need. And so I think if you had that information, then we could start to talk about where the shortages are and how soon the shortages could be filled. So I would like to see it like a plan in writing, but that's with the preparatory information not considered. Now, when you do consider our secretive needs, does that alter our desire to put out all that information I just discussed?
I don't believe so. I think when we bring a proposition to you, we could bring, here's what the revenue is projected for the 5 years. Here's the revenue or the expenses for the 5 years. And here's what our expenses are projected for in the capital need, and show that it may not fulfill the quota that we need, right? But I don't think we should wait to get all this information and come back to the board to start having discussions around the need that we have today. We know there's a need.
Yeah.
We know that for sure, that there's a need there. And I don't think that any one proposition that I will bring will fill the full quota. I'm almost sure of it. But we can align this information as when we come, here's what we're seeing on paper. Here's our projection as best as we can. And here's what this contract will fulfill. And it'll fill a sliver, a portion, cross my fingers, it fills the whole quota that we need, right? We do it in a single signing. But I think they can go hand in hand at the time that we deliver something. And, I may come back in the next month and say, well, we have no bites yet. I'm still continuing to look. So I think they can happen at the same time.
Ensuring that there's a little appetite for
Yes.
the future sale of landfill space is really the core of the question,
Right.
just to make sure that we're in alignment, that's an option.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a big thing on timing, right?
Right.
The business opportunities don't aren't always there. They come every 10, 20 years where communities are looking for landfill services. And then also as a landfill operator, the expenses don't come averaged over a year. They come like big dollar amounts all at once. So you have these like opportunities and expenses that you need to prepare for well in advance to be able to strike. And when something does come available, that's where you want to, as an organization, we want to be able to jump on it. So the timing is something to consider as well.
And so, I mean, I'm assuming that's why we're having this discussion, is you want to be able to be ready. It sounds like you're sensing that there's some opportunities out there. We know we have the need.
Yes.
And so you want to be able to be flexible enough to say like, yeah, I'm gonna do this knowing that my board is gonna be open to this. And I think with our guiding principles, it was sort of an understanding that this would happen, given that we do have such a long, life of the landfill. I think it's maybe a question of how active are you going to be? Are you going to go out and see? Or is it just, you're just, putting a sign out and you're saying like, okay, open for business, like come get it.
I like the position. I think Director Ramirez uses the phrase often is we want to be open for business.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have discussions around being open for business if there's no appetite for it. But
Right.
we understand the need that exists. And
Yeah.
I don't think that any one proposition that I bring back to the board would fulfill the entire quota that we're looking for. But I think they assist, to David's point, in the many relative items that are trying to achieve the same outcome, which is the best bargaining position for ourselves, and realizing when do we start exiting out of these regional agreements. And I would say as we start feeling more comfortable with those liabilities that we have and the affordability of our capital projects, because that keeps our infrastructure in play, which keeps us in open. If we don't get them done, those could be the reasons why we get red tagged and get closed down, because we're not keeping up with the infrastructure that complies with the legislation and the regulations that are being applied in today's time, and that will continue to be altered. We have Senate Bill 54 on the horizon. It's being developed. It'll go into play, and we'll start seeing different results. And that's really looking for material to come out of the landfill. That's always been the objective. And really also focusing on some material cleanups in the recycling streams that we have. And that could be to get better qualities, and also getting material segregated for different purposes as well.
And it's important to note that, kind of how we mentioned before, if we are successful at diverting the way the state wants, landfill is our predominant revenue maker, and it makes a lot more than diverting and, selling for commodity and things like that for recycling, or however that might look, right? So we have this push and pull that is currently happening, where our operational costs and the costs of all of the materials and labor that ties to our capital improvement projects will continue to rise, and that could be expedited. Like when he told me how much a liner was going to cost versus what I thought it was going to cost, in the matter of a couple of months of change, versus the revenue and the value of the landfill space possibly starting to decline, or that the appetite declines as well, right? And so it's not really a positive to have both of them going opposite, the value of our revenue going down and then the costs of everything rising. And I just wanted to, as just like that general overarching reminder, because we have opportunities, sometimes we seize them. And if it isn't going to conflict with our priorities and our responsibilities, why wouldn't you pay your credit card off that month instead of continuing to accumulate interest and paying something else, right? Like if we do have the value of it, or we pre-fund our reserves, right? Because I did talk about during the budget presentation that we did establish certain reserve policies, but then we didn't actually fund to the extent that we maybe anticipated, and whether it was oversight or, things do happen.
In the past, not this
In the
year.
past, right. But our mechanisms for funding the reserves this year don't close the gap. It's just trying to start to get us back to where we hope would have been had we continued to pre-fund the way we're supposed to, right? So there are all these different opportunities that revenue, increased revenue would be used for positively. And so those are just the high arching. It's almost like why wouldn't we? What are the negatives to why wouldn't we pursue opportunities if they're available to us and the appetite is there? So that way we could really vet out the no's and what negative impacts could that look like, and make sure that if the board feels comfortable with those, or if they aren't in the scheme of things a true like really strong negative, so that way you guys can make those decisions and help us, continue on that path.
Well, I think the end result of where we're going today is, of course, we want you to be open for business and find new money, because of course we see potentially large shortfalls. We don't want to lose existing contracts. We want to gain new contracts because our need is so large. I mean, that's what I'm getting out of today, and that's what I've been getting from what we've been talking about. So I think that's the end. But I think getting to the end, I think we should have really strong supporting logic. And that would include something Felipe keeps referencing. We're in year 3. So what have we done? What was our plan for 10 years? We knew we had to go from here to here over an 11-year period or whatever it is. And in year 1, we did X. In year 2, we did Y. In year 3, we're expecting to do Z. And in the next 8 years or whatever it is, we're going to need to do some other things. So showing those, the annual revenue expenses and capital improvement guesses, and keeping in mind the $38 million combined for the CalPERS and the bonding, that's part of our picture. That's kind of one of the elephants is what's our plan for that in this big scope of things. So I'm just hoping for a well-supported in writing logic, so anyone, public or a board member, can see where we're at, where we're going, and why we need these big contracts that we don't have right now, and what you can see at a glance, how we're vulnerable if we lose the existing ones or don't get more. The other questions I have are something that Rosanna and Felipe, and I'm a little bit confused of what they said. I want to know about the market saturation. So my first question is, are we at market saturation because there's more sellers of space than buyers? Or is it flipped around where there's a lot of buyers looking for space and there's few sellers available to sell?
Right. We're in the second half where we do have available space, and there have been it looks like possible prospects, but in 5 to 10 years, with the way that the state is desiring and pushing for diversion, it could be the point that they don't need this landfill space later, because everyone's doing such a good job diverting in all these other mechanisms that landfill doesn't need to be filled as rapidly. It's not going to have the same appeal and the value of selling that space. So there's varying, it could change.
So right now it's a seller's market.
In my perception, yes, because of where we're at with the way the state's regulations are, but we're continuing to go more to diversions, right?
So it's a seller's market now, and that strength of seller's market may weaken over time as diversions become higher. Okay.
But if I can add a little bit more to that, it is definitely turning into a seller's market because it's so hard to permit landfills. So hard to expand landfills. Everybody's NIMBY, and if we were to say we're going to expand the landfill, all of the whole community would have something to say about it. So it's very difficult to expand landfills. So that's what many of the landfills are closing around. John Smith is on its way to closing within the next 10 years. That time frame could increase or decrease. You have Watsonville, Buena Vista is on a path to closure. So you have these local landfills that are starting to see closure in their near-term future, and they need solutions for their community's waste, and they need to permit either landfill expansions or new landfills. Those take 15 years to do all the studies and everything that's needed. So they're going to need something either in the mid to interim or long-term. So that's like one item. The second item, which I hear Rosanna alluding to, is just the business model for landfilling. So as we divert, we're taking material out of a high margin operation where the landfill it costs a lot per ton and the expenses to run it day to day are fairly low. You do have the liners, et cetera, but it's a higher margin operation, and you're taking that tonnage like organics, heavy stuff, really heavy materials, and you're taking them and putting them into a lower margin process. And as we do that, as we get good at diversion, that means you're losing money. Actually,
We're at the very, I would say, the very beginning of this, and behavior change is a big part of that in our own communities. And so this is like, I don't know, 20, 40, 50-year outlook potentially of what we're talking about.
We're already seeing.
But it's true that the margins are different, but we are seeing, organics come out of the landfill, and they are heavy materials to a higher cost operation at a lower per ton rate. That's true.
So the margin is changing. Also, we have regulations which is focused on reduction or elimination of waste. So single-use items are now being converted over to a different process. So we also may see recycling tonnages go down. So as I look in the crystal ball of what's happening, I see tonnages and just the model of a tonnage model being a declining model of a business model. And so that's something to consider as we talk, is what Rosanna was getting at, that there may be less material to put in the landfill. We may have 100 years of landfill space, but because of diversion, that may increase. And because there's less demand for it. So how do we still maintain the whole operation? So,
I agree with the both positions, and I have one that's a little bit more extreme, right? And this is one that I shared in our budget review, is today the landfill has value. We know that there's a need for it, and that we haven't figured a way to do it. Yet Deborah's daughter in 3 years, when she's done with school, develops array or some sort of mechanism to downsize the material. And we have X amount of years of risk and liability ahead of us. At any given time, technology or legislation may shut down the value of the landfill. There is no guarantee that we have 120 years of landfill. Right? There's no guarantee. There is no guarantee that we achieve 120 years of value of the landfill, because those two items of legislation and technology may stop it in a single halt if it is the right technology, or legislation is already taken, to David's point, all these different steps to achieve no need for a landfill. And this is, seller's market, buyer's market, all in the eye of the beholder. It's at the time of the need. So in 2030, when franchise agreements expire, right, we know potentially Morgan Hill and Gilroy will expire. There's no guarantee what their need will be at that time. And their need will be, where do we deliver this material? Today it comes to X, tomorrow it may go to Y. And so those needs relatively change very quickly. So I can't really agree with it's the seller's market or the buyer's market today. But to the point of more landfills are closing and they're harder to expand, it becomes very more favorable for the seller. Yet you have the condition is, how long do I wait to sell if there's a potential just total loss of what the value of the landfill is because of technology or forced regulations and legislation. And I think they're all different, but they all kind of meet at the same end of the road. There's a need today. Will the value of our landfill exist 120 years from today? We don't know that. We really need to act on what the needs are today. We have liability risk that we want to pay down. We want to pay for the infrastructure. And we want to keep the current network and infrastructure readily available to provide the services that we still require today, right? And those are going to change. And that's why the master plan is such a benefit for the organization. It gives current staff, relative to what they're doing, is it the right approaches or the wrong approaches? And it gives the next generations of leaders to decide where we're gonna pivot based on what they're seeing, and we're already outlining that these items exist. And it just gives us more pivot opportunities, but I wouldn't say we hold on to the real estate because it'll have X amount of value at the end of the day, because I truly believe that this state has been very aggressive at looking at technologies and legislation that's gonna drive landfills to close, and that's why they're not reopening landfills here. But the need exists because you're seeing material fall off into other states because there's no landfills in California. And we haven't got to that position of there's the technology and here's the legislation that tie together to eliminate landfills. But those are exposures that we will face as we trek into the future.
And currently, we're still in a.
Not so soon.
Go for it, do it. Do it. I'll see it.
And currently, we're in a state where we're producing so much to society, but that could shift with some of this legislation. But right now, I mean, we're continuing to use and produce more than we ever have.
Yeah,
But that's what
Yeah.
that script could flip.
yeah.
You know?
We're hoping, we're working towards flipping that script.
Yes.
That's our,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we
but it's to
Yeah.
our own wallet's detriment.
Yeah. Yeah, the value of the landfill is like going up, and at some point, it's just gonna go down.
Well,
It's
and
better
we
to
need to
operate
sway
from a
those,
model.
right? And this is why we're looking at the best usage of our landfill gas, right? And how do we get value out of that could
That could,
really taper the impact of losing the value in the landfill.
Right.
The caps, could we do more to taper down of losing the value in the landfill?
Yeah.
But all these, even again, the Senate Bill 54 is really targeting is how do you make more out of the recycling you got by segregating it better or pulling commodities that you're missing? I'm really proud of the organization. We put an AI tool that's already doing that, and the state's already thinking about it. We did that like 4 years ago. Just where we are at the pinnacle of really being the leader in the industry. I'm excited.
so it doesn't seem like there's any negatives.
Well, at
Like
this point,
in
it's
terms of, I mean,
Yeah.
we're losing landfill space, but overall, it seems like there's far more benefit to go out and seeking these contracts, as long as they're contracts that truly are in favor. That they're, we're not gonna,
and just to be open, I don't think I have to go very far to seek. I think people are seeking. And it's just relative to what's happening in other markets relative to where am I taking it today? What is it costing me today? And again, I think one of our positions has been, we don't want to be the highest end, but we want to be relatively close to what the market is in our area, our circle of influence. And again, I think we have best rates in a lot of categories of what we do. But do we need to be a dollar when the next municipality open to us is charging 12 or 13 or 14 or 15? It's like, do I need to be at $1? I can probably still be at 7. That still be the best rate, but I'm still making probably what the use of our operations is applying for that one single commodity, things that we hadn't looked at in before. So we are really dissecting what's the need for the organization and why do we just take it to mound it, and it takes away from our efficiencies as well.
Tim Flanagan used to say that he thinks we have an infinite number of years of landfill space because of technology. And I'm sure he's thinking of legislation too. Producer responsibility goes up and then the trash goes down. So I think that we're gonna do the right thing. I would like to do it as intelligently and professionally as possible, and that includes a really strong paper trail, not just dollars and cents, but that white paper needs to be adjusted. The white paper doesn't talk about how a tonnage model, doesn't talk about business models, but to add to the white paper that we've been on a tonnage business model, and here's why it may not be a good model in the future. And then you're talking about the master planning that you're doing. It seems like the white paper and the master planning will be consistent with each other, but that white paper was never meant to be forever done, just like our master planning is new. So I think we should look to the white paper to add things in it, like organics are heavy, and as they're heavy and they're removed, we're gonna make less money. That's not in the white paper. And whatever else is not in the white paper, the status, in 2026, the status of landfills, that's probably not in the white paper, but it matters in our next 10 years of planning. So putting it in the white paper that in 2026, John Smith needs to expand, it takes 15 years of permits, Watsonville is closing, that's got to go somewhere. This leads to a market of need for landfill space. Just all these concepts, I think, are something that we can hand to a new board member or refer to a public member who says, why are you selling, why are you taking on someone else's trash? Because intuitively they don't like that. So here's why, and here's an executive summary, but if you want the details beyond that, you go further than the executive summary. And I don't think that the CalPERS and the bonds are in the there's no budget analysis, but if we're looking at the next 8 years and we've already done 3, why can't the white paper talk about our financial situation as it affects the need for balancing that landfill life, the rates and the landfill and the costs. So I just think we have a lot to do with the lot of progress to make on the white paper. Do we have staff, or is there no staff appetite for keeping that white paper up to date?
I think we have some vacancies that we would like to fill, and as we fill those vacancies, our bandwidth will open up, right?
Yeah.
I was reminded that I've been going full board for almost about 5 years now, so 4.5 years now, with really being short on staff the entirety of the time. So I'd really like to really sum that up going into this back third quarter and fourth quarter, to have all the vacancies filled so that we can all get a little bit of relief and we can create the bandwidth that we desire to have, right? And so we're very close. But I did remind the board, since I've been here, I've been short staff, in and out, switching up, finally getting to the point where staff is stabilized and these few vacancies will make a big significant impact for items of this nature, where we can go out and spend some time on the white paper without disregard to the current operation and the current needs. So very respectfully, Mayor, is that we are getting there, and we will work on white paper and a summary to support our position on more revenue.
Yeah, I had no idea we were short on staff. That's how ignorant I am about staffing. I didn't know we had a lot of positions or chronically had positions vacant that were preventing us from doing stuff.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Well, I mean, we're hiring the assistant GM. That's one of them.
Yeah, that's one, but you always gotta have one.
Yeah, when I came here, we onboarded a new finance director in year one. We lost our operations director in Brunel. So immediately we lost 2 significant positions. Throughout time, we lost Randy Evanger, who was the landfill supervisor. We lost the landfill manager. Can you remind me his name? Scott Messier. So throughout the process, people have vetted out. We lost the safety manager. All these positions have been onboarded, and we're working towards onboarding. But throughout my tenure here, we've seen vacancies occur because of retirement or I'm moving. And then most recently, within the last year, we lost our finance director, we lost our finance manager. Thank you very much, Rosanna, for filling some of these gaps that we've had. But every year since I've been here, there's been a challenge with keeping
HR.
Engineering.
It's the same with cities. Assistant city managers, fire chief, police chief, HR directors, finance directors. There's always one or two.
I'm not complaining. I'm just realizing that the bandwidth that we desire as an organization doesn't exist because we're offboarding.
Yeah.
And stabilizing that will result in yield and being more efficient than some of the requests that we
I just don't know that it'll ever stabilize.
do.
No, I mean, I'm serious.
Oh, it's stable.
You have 10 directors or 10 important managers, and they all come in later in their life because it takes long. You got to be later in your life.
And I think it's not really stabilizing, it's being prepared for succession planning. I think that's some of the things that we're doing now with the AGM position coming in, and getting other significant roles that can carry some of the infrastructure that had been normally carried by 3 or 4 individuals. We're broadening that, and that makes a healthy organization. We're making decisions that are in alignment with the structure that the board desires. And again, I don't think I'm complaining. I just want to make sure that the organization doesn't burn out a Rosanna, doesn't burn out a Ramirez, doesn't burn out the supervisor that's filling in with no manager and no counterpart in a supervisor, right? Those are things that we experience in the first obligation always is to tend to our operation. And this is where I've said they've been very magnificent in filling in everything we need to do on a daily basis, being short in these roles and still allowing us the capacity to be in a third year of a 11 to get that done. You would almost say, like, how do you even accomplish some of the optics that we've gained in that process by onboarding and offboarding on it? It has become the family that everybody contributes. You know, together we can make it happen, but individually we fall short. And so we're very close. And I'd be happy to report later back as we start filling some of these vacancies. But it has been a very strong and challenging balancing act to get the culture we have today with people coming and going, and then getting people to understand the culture that we want to have. And some of the people that left are because of the culture we wanted to have. So, and the silver tsunami that we see, you know, people chose that it's time for me to go. But we've been able to achieve and progress substantially in 4.5 years. So I'm very excited to report that.
In a word, are tip fees about maxed out that would be where they're reasonably competitive with other tip fees of other agencies nearby?
We're still on the lower end. You know, we do evaluations, and we did that this year throughout the budget process. SVR shows that they're at 70, yet there's a component that doesn't reflect on the tonnage rate, which is their AB 939 fee that they charge out to municipalities that equals a certain sum, but it's not on the gate rate. So they get a different stream of revenue outside of the gate rate for AB 939 implementations.
Yeah, the reason I asked that tip fee question is I'm just wondering how robust our analysis of tip fee potential there will be as we look for new contracts, and we explain what we're doing in these 11 years and where the tip fee discussion fits into that larger discussion.
I think we did that for you already. We projected what the tip fee would be by 2036 if we maintained the status. So we've done that already. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but we did create it in one of the budget packets to explain it.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So recalling that, reinserting that into some 11-year tracking of where we are and what we're doing. Like you said, we're in the third year. And I'm sure one thing we've already done is raise tip fees 5% every year for the next several years, right? Or 4.9, something like that. So having that in that updated report will help us understand why we still need to be open for business.
Yeah, and be aware, we won't bring the report back to the full board. We'll probably bring it to this committee first and then get feedback, and then we'll deliver it to the board.
Anything more, Kim?
No.
Great discussion. Thank you. This is exactly what I expected to get.
Well, why we even have a meeting then? Let's go to update on power generation.
I'll introduce power generation, and we left it at power generation agreements, and we wanted to let finance committee, as we're actively looking at many scenarios that have to do with either power generation or the landfill gas utilization. I think my first priority, and David, jump in whenever you want. First one is recognizing that we're in the 3 CE agreement and giving some optics around how we're doing and how we're performing with our 3 CE agreement that we entered in February. We're 6 months in. We collected about 6 months worth of data and are recognizing what are the challenges within this agreement for us. It's a 1-year agreement with two 1-year extension years that we can add on to it to up to a 3-year commitment with 3 CE. And then on running laterally with it, we also have our commitment and our expectation with Monterey One Water to deliver some sort of form of power. And you'll hear that we want to terminate the existing agreement. Why? Because it doesn't align to the production to the amount that they want to better receive on the back end. So you're going to hear discussions around that, terminating an agreement and then entering into new terms of what that agreement can look like for us. And running laterally with that is also our landfill gas utilization plan for the next 20 or 30 years. And there is items that we're working on. We're working with Mohali and Weinberger, Deborah and Josh. Josh is their power expert. And we are starting to work through some of these progressions, but we really wanted Finance Committee to be aware that all these items are really on the table, and you will hear the discussions around them, and they will probably come from outside of our organization. They can come from Monterey One Water, they could come from 3CE. 3CE, I just want to remind Finance Committee, last year when we entered into the agreement, around November, we had to be prepared to commit. And then they took it to their operational board or executive board in December. And then they took it to the board for approval in January, and we entered into the agreement in February.
And they have an ops board and a policy board.
Yeah, and so I think they went to ops board and then to policy board. And so one thing that's on the horizon, here we are in August, we'll have to be moving very fast, is what I've talked to Deborah about on what we're seeing with Monterey One Water, because that will be kind of the toggle for what happens with 3CE or not. And then also you have the other competing position for landfill gas utilization. Like, where is that draw going to be at? This committee here will hear very lots of detailed information over the next several months around those aspects. I just wanted to high level today, and as we start making progressions on where we're at with either one, forefront, where are we at with 3CE? And by when do we need to be ready to commit? It will be November. 2, movement on Monterey One Water. That's getting Monterey One Water to, I think these two things will happen at the same time, is terminate the agreement and then have a term sheet ready to enter into another agreement. And then we can now present where we feel we are with the landfill gas utilization. And I'd like to make decisions this year on starting to move that. I'll remind this committee is that we did a joint study with Monterey One Water. Black & Veatch performed the study. We got GHD to represent ReGen. We received the study, and we kind of figured out we're not on the same track. We're running at different paces. Your need is different than mine. And so we learned from the study what could be done. And then we tracked a second study with GHD to independently look at the options for ReGen as a standalone, and we learned from that. David has put in so much effort to realize what are the options that are presenting themselves with the uses of landfill gas. What are the options where it would go? Is it power? Is it renewable gas? Is it where is that? Is it solar? Is it turbines? So he's done his work, and I think he's very close to wanting to present it, but we got to track the first 2 before we can jump into that. As what we're doing with those first 2 will alter the position of the total gas that we would need.
The first 2 are M1 Water and ReGen.
Yeah,
And
yes.
then 3CE.
3CE,
yes.
and Monterey One Water. And then it'll be landfill gas utilization based on the results of those 2.
Because you're thinking you would max out those power agreements, or like,
Well, this board has been committed to give something to Monterey One Water.
yeah.
And we are in an agreement with Monterey One Water, and we won't get out of that agreement by not doing anything, but it is an option that we could be curious about. We can see, one of the questions for Shimo, Ollie, and Weinberger was, is there a risk by not delivering power to Monterey One Water if there is a better usage of what we can do with the power or the gas that we have today? But David's been very creative. We're not ready to present today, but I think you're on the right track, is where is it going to be best suited for us? And we want to make sure that what we present are the best options that we can realize. And we can realize that Monterey One Water agreement would greatly be better than the one we're in with 3C because of the requirements that are attached to the need. And then the constant supply that would go over. And then I think the rate and the term are the most significant items that we would want to render with Monterey One Water. And I think they're seeing where we're at, but we're eagerly want to get into those decisions as well. So this finance committee in the next several months is going to hear a lot about power, a lot about landfill gas utilization. And I'll hand it over to David.
I think you got a lot of the points. I think one of the key things to understand from an operational standpoint is that the team over at the landfill gas energy plant has been stellar. They have worked so hard to maintain the equipment, to run the equipment, to get here at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., whenever they get the call that an engine's down, they are out here in the middle of the night trying to fix it. Even with that stellar crew, it's been difficult to keep all the engines running. And I'm having to remind them that they're doing a really excellent job, even though the engines are not performing how they should. And so we did a lot of root cause analysis of the failures of why the engines are going down. And it has almost 100% to do with the fuel, the landfill gas.
Dirty,
It's dirty.
dirty fuel.
So we have high liquid in the gas, and we have high siloxanes, and siloxanes, silica, sand that comes in with the gas. And so I've embedded myself with that team, and we've gone through a lot of root cause analysis, and those are the two items that are just really killing that gas plant and making it really difficult to run the engines. It's like having buying them a semi truck and then having them fill it with fuel and water and sand, and then asking them to drive across the country, and it is difficult. So one of the key things ReGen has to evaluate is we need to upgrade the gas cleanup system on that facility. That's not cheap, and there are high maintenance costs for cleaning up the gas. So we need a liquids removal system, which is a cooler. It runs, it's basically a heat exchanger cooler that cools the gas so the liquids can condense out, and we can take the liquids out. And then we need a siloxane removal. Siloxane removal is the media, so it's like a Brita filter for siloxanes, and you have to change that media out. That's multiple millions of dollars.
So we don't do it now?
We don't.
We don't.
So we do some H2S removal, hydrogen
Right.
sulfide removal, but other than that, there's no treatment at that facility. So the key point is like talking to M1W and other and customers and being like, well, you need 95% uptime in the power delivery. In the past 10 years, we've averaged 75% uptime, which means one of the 4 engines has always been down because of the gas, the fuel system that's being delivered. So if we're going to talk about investing more into the electricity generation, on the other side, we need the revenue to be able to obtain that uptime that is required. So as we're talking about landfill gas utilization, understanding all the capital expense costs, all the maintenance expense costs, that's been my world for quite a while now, trying to hash out what these actual expenses are over a long term and comparing project versus project. But like, we can't keep running these engines the way we've been running them for the past 20, 30 years. It has to be upgraded. The volume of gas we're getting is more, the gas is different. It can change from day to day. And the team is stellar. The team is stellar, and we have to give them the right tools that equal their commitment to keeping the things up.
Have our new automated wellheads made a difference? Has that helped?
So the wellheads are really helping for extraction. So we're getting more gas, which is a great thing for environmental.
Gas is just
It's the
volume.
quality, and as you collect more gas, you don't always get the best gas. Right? So different parts of the landfill are biologically in different types of maturity and different types of waste that gets placed. So they can produce poor gas in one area, but really good gas in another. So both emission types are bad. So we want to capture all of it. But
I can see why
so
lead
to
fills
increase our
flare.
methane content is actually good. It's
Okay.
about 50% or so, which is good. But it comes along with all this other stuff too.
Yeah,
And the other stuff is poor for engines. You don't want to open up a head of an engine and water come out. You don't want that to happen.
So I would make sure that nobody's alarmed, like we're aware of this.
so we've been able to meet our
So-
agreements.
So we're not meeting it right now. So we've produced about I would say about 6,000 megawatt hours of the 17,000 megawatt hour delivery that we have committed to. So we're about 11,000 megawatt hours short, but we have half a year to go. And we have to produce more. I think we're making more than ever. This over our commitment with what was the last
Right? Not Viacom, but those guys. 3 phases.
3 phases, yes, 3 phases. So 3 phases. So we're in a better position, but we realized, well, we upgraded the contract, we got an engine. We really did nothing to figure out the gas quality piece of it.
Mm,
And that's gonna be analyzed in the delivery of what we wanna do with the landfill gas. So don't be alarmed that we don't have a clue what we wanna get done. We have an inclination, David's done his work. As we get prepared to share with the finance committee and then deliver it to the board, we will have some options of how we better that process, and whether it's putting in a cleanup system or abating a cleanup system by doing a different option. So don't be alarmed by it now. I think now we've learned what we needed to learn. The team is stellar. Now we need to incorporate those solutions to those problems in our global usage of the landfill gas. So
mhm.
just be prepared. It's coming as well. So these topics here, we'll hear a lot more of through the end of the year.
I'm assuming whatever we end up by doing with that landfill gas, it still needs to be cleaned. Like you still need to take out the liquid and the sand.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we could continue running it this way and, having the problems we're having. I'm not going to recommend that we do that. We have to invest in cleaning up the gas if we're going to make these commitments to these other customers that we're going to be providing uptime, that they're going to have a certain amount of energy. We have to plan for that.
Mm-hmm.
One way is to keep the gas the way it is and have way more engines because more of them can be down.
Mm.
I don't suggest that, but we can slice it a bunch of different ways. And I think that gas cleanup is, when you look at the project expenses, I'm not doing an option where we don't clean up the gas. Like I have a gas cleanup system in there because it has a lot to do with the reliability of sending power over and the maintenance costs of running that operation.
But like if we decide to move to liquid, making liquid natural gas, or we would still have to clean it up first before we
absolutely,
go.
yeah.
So I mean,
You're changing from 50% methane to like 95+% methane.
Yeah.
And I think the end goal is who pays for it, us or somebody else,
right.
right? And those will be part of the option.
Right.
Does ReGen on the hook for the cleanup, or is someone else on the hook for the cleanup?
Right.
Will be the opportunity for
Right.
us.
And as you look at most technologies, engines, linear generators, et cetera, they all have a gas quality spec for the gas you put in there to be able to guarantee you're going to get the runtime.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to involve something. It's like Felipe said, who's going to pay for it? And if we take it on, we have to have that line item, CapEx and maintenance expense considered in the agreement that we make with the customer.
Mm-hmm. So like that could be a part of the M1 water.
Which is the discussions. We've got the picture over here. You got to know how much it costs you to make a widget,
Right.
before you sell it.
Yeah.
And we really narrowed down like what we need to make the widgets,
Mm-hmm.
the energy over here, to be able to have the conversation with M1W and say, this is what we would need to be able to give you what you're asking for. If they want 50% uptime,
Mhm.
we can do that,
Right,
we
right.
without upgrading.
Mhm.
But if we're talking they want 95+% uptime, we need redundancy, we need a good, clean system that's running efficiently and we need to build that.
Well, and I would imagine the life of the engine is so much better if you're putting in cleaner gas.
Absolutely, yeah.
The expenses to
Yeah.
upkeep them is
Right,
potentially
right.
less as
Yeah,
well.
right now we're on a 3-month schedule to clean out the siloxanes, that sand I was
Mm.
telling you about.
Mhm.
They have to do a decoke every 3 months. So there's 4 engines, so every 3 months, one of them has to go down. And we have to clean out the heads, scrape out all the buildup, et cetera, that's in there. And or else the valves don't close all the way. You get reduced efficiency output. You have a 1 megawatt engine, but because the valves aren't closing and it's not firing at the right rate, you're only getting
Yeah.
750 kilowatts out of it. You're only getting a quarter of the. So yeah, we dive really deep. The engineering team dove really deep into the operations. We understand the power markets now. We understand the type of agreement that we have with M1W and the commitments we have to make to fulfill it. And we're well informed to make good recommendations to you all.
And even with that added expense, you still think we can come under what they're currently paying now?
Well, there's a discussion about like margins. What should we expect to get? So we may be able to come under,
Mhm.
but you don't want to. There's opportunity costs. So you spending a lot of money to
Right.
get like a small margin.
Right.
And we're also in getting into risk of like making a commitment to our neighbor
Mhm.
that requires us to put down money and to say we're going to do something. And we may want to increase those margins that we should expect to be able to deliver that amount of risk and that amount of opportunity costs for delivering the power. And these are just the items we're talking with M1W about.
Yeah.
What do they really need?
Mhm.
Do they really need that? What uptime do they need? What amount of power do they need? What's the price that they're willing to talk about for that package that they're asking for?
Mhm.
And all these OpEx and maintenance expenses commitments that we can make are tied to what they would be willing to pay. And what they want, what the uptime they want, which power they want. Do they want 2 megawatts or do they want 5 in the next 5 years? We want to build one plant when we build it. We don't want to build like a piecemeal plant when they really want 5 megawatts, but the current agreement is for 2.
And these new infrastructures and processes, they have that initial cost, but the ongoing hits directly into our operating budget, right? So we don't get a net positive if our operating budget continues to increase unless our revenues are balancing out. And then if they need a 95% uptime, which means we may still need to run the teams ragged if we can't all make the stars align, that's personnel costs that will continue to rise with every CPI increase, if we need more bodies to make sure that we're running at full all the time.
Yeah.
Those are just things we have to consider of these ongoing and compounded costs for every year thereafter, right? So
We want them to define the widget.
Right.
And we want to build the factory for that. That's what they need.
And what we might want to sell beyond those two.
We're very
Amazing.
close
Okay,
for
yeah.
the options to be presented. So again, I think we need to work out the discussions with Monterey One Water. It'll help us realize what we need to do with 3CE. And then we can incorporate the 20-30 year plan of the next type of landfill gas utilization that we intend to execute on, that will make us more efficient and address all the issues that we're aware of.
Thanks, Kim. First thing that comes to my mind is that 3CE regularly mentions at their policy board meetings their contract with ReGen. I think because it checks a few boxes of where they want to be as an organization, even though it's it's like a flea on a dog, but it's it's much more valuable to
Fleet,
them.
we're an important fleet.
And they are really happy that they're in partnership with us because it
looks good.
looks good in different ways. And I think one of the ways it looks good is that they want to market themselves as, look what we do with ReGen, we can do it with you. Landfill all over California or other special districts all over California that have some option there.
You know, I will share that when we had the initial discussions that this was definitely a learn for us with Robert, and he definitely was aware of our position of we're still exploring so much more. And on the flip side, we've been working with 3CE to make a commercial of our partnership. So we're happy with the relationship too. And again, I think at the end of the day is we also want to make good business decisions for the organization. And I think both of us are aware of the position that we were going to be exploring throughout this process. I think Shudo knows we've been exploring through this process, really looking for the best results for the organization. And I think they respect our position because those were indicated up front at the time that we initiated the first discussions to enter into agreement. So I want to make sure that I think we have that box checked, whether we remain there or we don't remain there, but that we did have those discussions conceptually in the discussion before we entered into agreement that we wanted to learn, we wanted to see what those best options are, and that we were exploring the best utilization of our gas at the same time.
You're talking 3CE or M1 Water?
Both.
On M1 Water.
On just to tag off that, and it reflected in the term of the agreement. So we made a 1-year agreement with 3CE with two 1-year possible extensions. So that was kind of in the decision there.
It was explicit that this was a
Right.
trial.
Yeah.
Short term potentially. With M1W, I sense that we were like on a honeymoon. And when we agreed, we just assumed that it's kumbaya, we're gonna help each other. This is so great over the fence. And now it's like we need a prenup agreement because we're having our own thoughts and they're having their own thoughts. Because it's, before you get married, now they're starting to think about what does this really mean? And I wanted to ask whether we can make progress on a term sheet for a new agreement before we end our current agreement. So when we end our current agreement, it doesn't look like we're walking away from each other. It looks like we're walking into a better place.
I think that's the intent already, is that we get out of one and enter into a new one. That is the expectation from Shudo. I think also we need to understand that it's in our best interest to enter to this agreement. We can't enter into agreement where we break even. It does not make sense. There's too much liability and risk around it. So that's the caveat. And this is what we're exploring now with knowing more. We want to know what triggers, what is that going to trigger? Conceptually, he's on board at the rate and the term that we're looking for. So that's a really good sign today, right? I think that's the most elaborate piece that I would want to share is that conceptually of perm and dollar wise, he's aware of where our position's at. And we're aware that the match is no longer in that first agreement. Will come in the second agreement. But yes, to your point, I think the expectations are being set that this is favorable for both organizations to do so. And that willingness to do it. But we also want to better explore if we can't agree on a term and the dollar amount and the term of the commitment, that what would that risk be for our organization, especially that we're in an agreement and haven't executed into the agreement, the new one? And what if at the end of the day we had to walk away? What would that risk look like for our organization? So we want to learn more about that as we enter into these discussions on, taking the first verse and then creating the second. But the expectation is that we could enter into the second that will make it worth while, like David said, pays for the infrastructure, pays for the term, pays for us to have the uptime that we want. And it's not just the break even, because the break even makes no sense. why would we do it? It's not influencing what we want in the revenue aspect. The expenses are high. The results and yield are very low. So why would we enter into another agreement over a 20-year period to just break even? It is not a relatively good business decision, but I would say what the writing on the wall is the term and the dollar amount that we've talked about fit the coverage of the expense and also fit that we're not only breaking even. So more to come.
All right, so is it hypothetically possible that at the same board meeting, we could terminate the existing agreement and enter in and approve starting a new agreement? Or must there be a long time of separation between the two?
No, I think they're gonna happen together if they're going to happen together. They won't come separately unless there's a break in the discussion of here's what we're expecting and here's the term that we're expecting. If that goes south, then you may not see the result that you're looking
You may
for.
not see the second one at the same
Yes,
time.
yeah.
When you said, why would we do this if we could break even? I think no matter how high the expenses are, if we break even, it doesn't cost us a penny. Maybe opportunity time because your attention and focus and management on doing all this. But the reason that it's worthwhile, perhaps, if we break even, is because it gives us something good to do with the landfill gas. That was one of the main reasons we did it, was not to be flaring it off, but to be using
I
it.
wouldn't be worried about we're gonna do something good with landfill gas. We have a lot of options that we'll be presenting with the landfill gas that will do what we want to do.
It'll do more than break even.
Yes.
So why break even when
Yes.
you have another opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For that.
And on the personnel side, right, why put those additional pressures and impact how David described 3 a.m.s, the 12 a.m.s, because there's are certain times I've seen, at least when I first onboarded, and I was meeting with, different ReGen family, and I'm going, oh, so when do you get a break? Like, who covers you when you're covering everybody else? So it was these conversations of is there a way to where we don't have to put that type of impact? Is there a way to mitigate some of these things? And it's not, maybe don't do certain contracts at all, but we have to be really strategic about the overall. It does have to be well above break even, so that way we can address these things internally that are impacting us on an ongoing basis.
If I could offer just one more thought on that is there's opportunity costs. So that money's tied up.
Right.
And which means we can't put equipment in the MRF, we can't make changes to the landfill, so it encumbers those funds
Right.
over to a break even or a low margin activity. So just wanted to balance that.
Yeah, I think the break even piece is the risk factor. Something goes terribly
It
wrong.
goes terribly wrong.
You have nothing to compensate the terribly wrong risk. Yeah. Appreciate
Yeah.
the feedback, guys.
Yeah, I was thinking that there'd be a way to incorporate the opportunity cost. It's a cost, and a way to incorporate the risk cost in the break even, not just break even on the day to day and don't worry about the opportunity cost or the risk cost. And then if you break even on the day to day, you've really lost. I was thinking of charging a high enough price so that your opportunity costs and your risk costs were included in that, and you can still break even and not do so bad, except if you had a better opportunity. You spoke mostly, David, about the electricity generation, and then you and Kim just mentioned that, with gas generation, you're pretty much got to do the same thing as far as upgrading the engines and upgrading the quality of the gas coming in and that kind of stuff. So I just want to double back. Is it all the same whether we end up with gas generation or electricity? Is that we have the same challenges and the same costs involved in meeting the challenges?
I'll go ahead and just jump in. I don't believe so. I don't think that it's the same in every scenario. There's going to be different scenarios, and I think the big caveat of different scenarios is who pays for the infrastructure that we desire. Is that ReGen investment, or is that a external partner that we can enter into an agreement with that would absorb some of these initial costs that would abate ReGen from going and digging into more capital infrastructure or capital funding projects for these types of items? So I would say no, they're not exactly the same options that would render your jobs.
Okay, so if we stay with electricity and we didn't do a lot of gas, the third party is still relevant, or we're assuming we do it in-house.
It could be. I think maybe you're a couple of clips ahead of us, I think, in what you're looking for in today's conversation, but I think the options will be relatively clear when they're presented to you and the rest of the board, that the options are not built the same, and the risk factor associated to the type of operation we would enter into are not the same. The revenue factor is not the same, so they're gonna have a variation, and it's gonna be like a menu. I want less risk with this type of revenue. I don't want this revenue with this type of risk type mentality. So you're gonna see those options being presented.
Higher revenue, higher risk.
Higher revenue, higher risk. Does it make sense? Or could you stabilize your risk? I would say I'm gonna speak loudly, and David, you can slap me across the head on the power.
You're not close enough.
You know, like I would say, like in power right now, we probably have a risk of like 80%. Very high. So what we do, always there's a risk factor with it because we're running dirty gas. If we ran a different, model and we did renewable natural gas, the revenue may be less, but the risk factor is now at 10%. Like we carry no risk factor. Like it's never gonna bump out that revenue to be lower than performed. When you have a 70%, it'll take 100 million and make it into 30 million because you have so much risk into it. You take 50 million and have 10% risk and you only use 5 million, you made 45 million, still better than what you would have had with high risk and high revenue. So those are the options that we're considering to present at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. I always think I always feel overwhelmed, like I'm learning it for the first time with a fire hose, and then it's my turn to provide feedback. So I'm wondering what we can study prior to November, or you said the next several months there'll be a lot more information coming, and we'll be making some decisions.
I think the option should be that if you want to know more, then let's offer that time. I think David's time and my time to individually sit with the interested parties that want to know more, to give more education on questions and why and how come as we present. I don't think we're going to present and we want to. I think what we're going to do is we're going to present. We're going to seek the feedback, and I think during that feedback time, if Kim wanted to know more, then let's spend an hour of time to ask these singular questions without breaking the Brown Act, right? On having a quorum and a meeting, but individual meetings, as we've done with finances, right? People were curious about finances, and I said, let's get everybody in for 1 hour, and we'll give a 101 on finance on what we're seeing here at ReGen, and that worked really well. I think your position is right. It's been a huge learning curve for me. I think that was a huge learning curve for David, and he's the engineer. He had absolutely no intel on what was going on in there until we opened up Pandora's box and said, whoa, there's so much to learn. And he didn't just learn it himself. He shared the learning processes with many others, which may improve the position of optics around why do we continue doing it this way. David used to ask, did you check all these boxes on why we're having water and siloxanes in our gas? The current team has checked all the boxes and says, yes, I've checked all these boxes. The water is empty. This is gone through. This is done. Yet we still get the same impurities that are occurring. So we know a whole lot more. We definitely know a whole lot more. And I think the option to help educate along the way with the people that are willing to invest some time, staff will make the time to answer questions and answer the how comes. I don't think David will ever have enough time to really speak to the detail of everything that occurs in there. We really want to speak to the detail that encourages making a business decision around what's next and beneficial for ReGen.
Well, specifically, I assume that David has some documents at his disposal, or he's researched different industries online, or not online, but he's researched different industries. You mentioned somewhere in today's meeting there were 2 greenhouse gas studies, and maybe that was relevant to revenue opportunities. I can't find it. Oh no, it was relevant to
landfill gas utilization.
Yeah. So have you already sent those to us, those 2 greenhouse studies? Okay.
You want me to send them again?
You would be the one to send them, or Ida? In the past, she sent them.
Ida could send them.
No, I don't need you to resend them. I just wonder who sent them.
No, we talked about them. We definitely the feasibility study was part of it. That was a huge document that got delivered.
Okay, good.
And it was I think it was a few years ago. And then earlier this year, we had the GHG landfill gas utilization study, where we did bring that and talk about some of the potentials for revenue based on different technologies.
A few years ago, which study was sent?
The feasibility study.
Thanks.
That was the joint document.
It was called the joint
M1W
feasibility
joint
study.
feasibility study between M1W and ReGen, where it looked at what's the best use case for organics, and there was a lot. It is a lot of information.
Great. Thank you very much.
And I can understand why it sounds like there's a lot of information there. It is. So there's a lot of weekends and late nights reading stuff and trying to put the pieces together. It's going to be really hard to like make one document that can inform you guys of both the power markets, which the way the grid works is insane. And rightfully so. It's a complicated system and it is insane to understand. And then in our world here in landfill, the options we have are many and the opportunities are abundant here. We have like the best case scenario for many things, many options, and that makes it even harder to make a decision. And so I think the best resource we can provide is basically our time to deliver the information and understand where your curiosity is and give you the information one-on-one, kind of like Felipe is saying. It's a lot, and I have been very, very, very confused along the way, and I'm finally at a point where I feel confident enough to make recommendations because the pieces all fit together all of a sudden, and I think we're ready to start talking about it and getting serious about recommendations. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're very creative in the process, looking, but knowing was the value to making the change, right? If we didn't know, we would have said, well, just keep running it the way we're running it. But we learned so much throughout this 2.5 year kind of prep of just learning and understanding how it was going to function. We're still trying to identify what are the hindrances, what are the things that are going to prevent us from taking some of these options. We reviewed a little bit with the legal team, and they presented some challenges us that we had to be creative around. How do we address those, and how do we find the answer before we go and make any changes to where we're at today? But again, you're going to hear a lot of it, and we thought we should just start high level. There's really no decisions that need to be made. We're still working on it, but you may hear from outside people is like, what's going on here, what's going on here, and what's going on here. You guys want to know, like, hey, relatively, our staff is prepared and is working these final details and nuances out to get us to a position where we can negotiate and get into a final agreement and really close the loop on discovery and now start the implementation and build process.
I want to express my gratitude to all of you who are working through these big issues. And it shows your level of curiosity to learn new things, to try and get to a better place. And I think that's what makes this ReGen so amazing, is that you're willing to say, like, no, there's got to be something better that we can do. And it's true. I mean, other places, I'm sure, just flare it and they're fine. But you recognize that there's something pretty amazing out there. And you know, Rosanna, what you talked about today, again, you know, our landfill is going to become, you know, less valuable. And it's like, well, so what is valuable out there? And let's try and use it to the best of our ability. So like, I think I just love your willingness to learn. And I want to thank you for that, because I don't see that a lot in my world sometimes in my other council. So I want to thank you for that.
It reminds me of Deborah when she got on. She said she loves what this organization does because it's interesting, you know, it's a good cause, it's interesting, it's fascinating, and all the rest. And it wouldn't be as interesting and fascinating if all of you were bringing
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, general manager communications,
I have none at this time.
future agenda items.
More of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Two above.
I see what the crystal ball saying.
Okay, no closed session, so we are adjourned. Thank you.